Scary telling.
I am Sarah, a young woman living in a small village where the authorities have implemented oppressive new laws. These laws require us to conform to a strict set of rules and regulations, and those who refuse to comply are punished severely. I have always been a bit of a rebel, never one to follow the crowd. I value my freedom and the ability to be myself, even if that means going against the wishes of the village elders. But my refusal to submit has brought me into conflict with the authorities, and now I am facing the consequences. It all started when I spoke out against the new laws. I couldn't bear the thought of living in a world where I couldn't be myself, so I took a stand. But the authorities didn't take kindly to my defiance, and soon I found myself being arrested and brought before a tribunal. The judges were ruthless, and they had already decided on my fate. I was to be crucified like the others who had refused to repent. I knew that my actions had consequences, but I couldn't give up my freedom and my sense of self just to conform to their rules. As I waited for my execution, I couldn't help but feel a sense of fear and anxiety. I knew that what was about to happen would be painful and agonizing, but I also knew that I had to stay strong. I couldn't let them break me. But even as I tried to muster up the courage to face my fate, I couldn't help but wonder if there was another way. Was there a way to escape this fate? A way to fight back against the oppressive authorities who sought to crush my spirit and take away my freedom? As I awaited my fate, I could only hope that I would find the strength to endure what was to come. I refused to give up my freedom and my sense of self, even in the face of death. I was determined to stand my ground and show them that I was not afraid, that I would not back down. I was Sarah, and I would fight to the bitter end. The day of my execution arrived, and I was marched through the village to the place where I was to be crucified. I could feel the eyes of the villagers on me, watching and judging. Some of them spat at me, while others threw insults and objects my way. But I refused to let them see me break. I held my head high and tried to keep my composure, even as fear and anxiety threatened to overwhelm me. I knew that what was about to happen would be agonizing, but I couldn't let them see me weak. As I walked, I couldn't help but feel a sense of shame. It was as if I was a criminal, being paraded through the streets for all to see. But I knew that I had done nothing wrong. I had simply refused to submit to their oppressive laws and to give up my freedom. As I neared the place of my execution, I saw the executioners preparing the cross. They looked cold and heartless, as if they took pleasure in inflicting pain on others. I could feel the fear rising within me, and I wondered if I had made the right choice in standing up to the authorities. But it was too late now. I had made my choice, and I had to see it through to the end. I took a deep breath and prepared myself for what was to come. The executioners approached me, and I could feel the cold metal of the spikes as they prepared to drive them into my hands and feet. I gritted my teeth and tried to prepare myself for the pain, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. As the spikes pierced my flesh, I let out a scream of agony that echoed through the village. I felt as if every nerve in my body was on fire, and I wondered how long I could endure the pain. But I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I held on as best I could, trying to focus on something other than the pain. I thought of my family, of my friends, of everything that I had ever held dear. I refused to let them take that away from me. As the hours passed, the pain became more and more unbearable. I could feel myself slipping away, losing consciousness. But even in my weakened state, I refused to give up. I had come this far, and I wasn't about to let them break me now. I could hear the villagers jeering and taunting me as I hung there, suspended between life and death. But even as they mocked me, I knew that I had done the right thing. I had stood up for my freedom and my sense of self, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. As the sun began to set and the villagers started to disperse, I felt myself slipping away. I knew that death was coming, and I welcomed it. I had done what I could, and I had shown them that I was not afraid. I was Sarah, and I would fight to the end. As the night fell and the village quieted down, I hung there on the cross, my body racked with pain. Every breath felt like fire in my lungs, and the spikes in my hands and feet felt like they were tearing me apart. The darkness surrounded me, and I felt as if I was alone in the world. I wondered if anyone cared that I was suffering, if anyone would come to my aid. But deep down, I knew that I was alone in my struggle. As the hours passed, the pain became more and more unbearable. I could feel my body weakening, my strength slipping away. I wondered how much longer I could hold on, how much longer I could endure this agony. But even in the midst of my pain, I refused to let them see me break. I held on as best I could, trying to keep my mind focused on something other than the pain. I thought of my family, of my friends, of everything that I had ever held dear. I refused to let them take that away from me. As the night wore on, I began to lose consciousness. I could feel my body shutting down, my mind slipping away. But even in my weakened state, I refused to give up. I had come this far, and I wasn't about to let them break me now. Suddenly, I heard a sound. It was a strange, eerie noise that seemed to come from all around me. It was as if the darkness itself was speaking to me, whispering dark secrets that I couldn't understand. At first, I thought it was my imagination playing tricks on me. But as the sound grew louder and more insistent, I realized that it was something real. Something that I couldn't see, but that I could feel in every fiber of my being. The darkness seemed to close in around me, and I felt as if I was being consumed by it. It was as if the very air itself was choking me, and I struggled to breathe. Suddenly, I felt a presence around me. It was a dark, malevolent force that seemed to be feeding off my pain and fear. It was as if the darkness itself had taken hold of me, tearing at my mind and soul. I screamed as the presence took hold of me, tearing at me from the inside out. It was the most terrifying thing I had ever experienced, and I wondered if I would ever be free of it. As the darkness consumed me, I knew that I was lost. The pain was too much, the darkness too overwhelming. I felt as if I was slipping away, losing myself in the abyss. But even as the darkness consumed me, I refused to give up. I held on as best I could, struggling to find some shred of hope in the midst of the despair. I knew that I had to stay strong, no matter what. I was Sarah, and I would fight to the end. Days had passed since my crucifixion, and I had been left to rot on the cross. The villagers had long since lost interest in me, and I had become nothing more than a warning to others who dared to stand up to the authorities. But something had changed in the village. Strange things had begun to happen, and rumors were spreading that my spirit had returned to haunt those who had condemned me to death. At first, it was small things. Objects would go missing, strange noises could be heard in the dead of night. But as time passed, the incidents became more frequent and more sinister. People began to disappear, their bodies found torn and mutilated. The villagers were terrified, and they began to whisper about the curse that had been placed on them. But I knew the truth. I knew that it was the darkness that had taken hold of the village. The same darkness that had consumed me on the cross. It was a malevolent force that fed off pain and fear, and it was growing stronger every day. I watched as the villagers tried to protect themselves from the darkness, but they were powerless against it. It seemed to move through the village like a plague, consuming everything in its path. I tried to warn them, to tell them that there was nothing they could do to stop it. But they wouldn't listen. They were too consumed by their fear, too desperate for a way out. As the darkness spread, I realized that I was the only one who could stop it. I was the only one who had the power to fight back against it, to banish it back to the abyss where it belonged. But I was weak. I had been consumed by the darkness once before, and I knew that I was not strong enough to face it again. As the darkness closed in around me, I knew that I had to find the strength to fight back. I had to find a way to banish it back to the abyss, to protect the village from its malevolent grip. I closed my eyes and focused all of my energy on banishing the darkness. I felt a surge of power flow through me, and I knew that I had tapped into something deep and primal. I opened my eyes and stared out into the darkness, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt as if I was facing an ancient evil, a force that had existed since the dawn of time. But I refused to give up. I stood my ground, my eyes locked on the darkness. I felt a surge of energy flow through me, and I knew that I had the power to banish the darkness once and for all. With a scream of defiance, I unleashed all of my power on the darkness. I felt it tear through me like a blade, cutting me to the bone. But I held on, knowing that I had to see it through to the end. And then, suddenly, it was gone. The darkness had been banished, consumed by my power. I stood there, panting and sweating, my heart racing in my chest. The villagers emerged from their homes, staring at me in wonder. They had seen the darkness consume me, had seen me fight it back with all of my power. And in that moment, I realized that I had become something more than just Sarah, the rebel who had been crucified. I had become a symbol of hope, a beacon of light in the darkness. I knew that I had a purpose now. I had to protect the village from the darkness, to banish it back to the abyss where it belonged. And I was ready to do whatever it took to make that happen. For I was Sarah, and I would fight to the end. The village had been saved from the darkness, and the villagers had begun to look at me with a newfound sense of awe and respect. They had seen me banish the darkness with my own power, and they knew that I was something special. As I walked through the village, I could feel their eyes on me. Some of them whispered my name in hushed tones, while others simply stared in wonder. But I knew that there was still work to be done. The darkness was still out there, waiting to consume another village, another group of people who dared to stand up against authority. I knew that I had to keep fighting, to keep banishing the darkness wherever it may arise. And I knew that I could not do it alone. I gathered a group of like-minded individuals, rebels who refused to bow down to oppressive authority. We called ourselves the Sarahites, in honor of the woman who had inspired us all to stand up for what was right. Together, we traveled from village to village, banishing the darkness wherever we found it. We became known as a force to be reckoned with, a group of rebels who would stop at nothing to protect the innocent from the grip of malevolent forces. As the years passed, our legend grew. People whispered our names in hushed tones, and our reputation as protectors of the oppressed spread far and wide. And though I knew that I could never undo the pain and suffering that had been inflicted upon me, I took comfort in the fact that my legacy had become something more than just the memory of a rebel who had been crucified. I had become a symbol of hope, a beacon of light in the darkness. And though I knew that there would always be those who would seek to snuff out that light, I was ready to fight them with every fiber of my being. For I was Sarah, the woman who had been crucified for her beliefs. And I would fight to the end for the sake of all those who had suffered and died at the hands of oppressive authority. My legacy would live on long after I was gone. And I knew that the Sarahites would carry on my fight, protecting the innocent and banishing the darkness wherever it may arise. For as long as there were rebels like us, there would always be hope. And as long as there was hope, the darkness could never truly win.